Welcome to this presentation on writing your resume presented by the Office of First Year Engagement and Professional Development at the University of the Incarnate Word. This is a very basic introduction to writing your resume, and we encourage every student with questions to visit our office for more information. One of the most important things to remember when writing your resume is to sell, not just tell. If there are other students that can do the same job you did, an employer is not going to be impressed by just reading a copy of your job description or bullets of your job description. So make sure that you're standing out through the words you're using, the experiences you're using. They do not just have to be work experiences. They can be academic, they can be extracurricular. Just make sure to really sell your experience in a way that an employer is going to really know that you stand out above the crowd. So one of the first questions we get in career services related to resumes is if there's a right way or a wrong way, and if there are just samples we can give you. We do have samples in our office that you can use as a general benchmark, but really there's no right or wrong way. Different situations are going to call for different things, different combinations, different vocabulary words. It's all going to be about the job you're applying to. Each resume will need to be updated to be directly applicable to that job. So really, if you have questions related to, is this right or is this wrong, come talk to us. There are some general guidelines about keeping it clean, simple, clear, and concise, but otherwise there's no one true method. So one of the things that we like to point out at this point in the resume presentation is what employers are actually looking for. So these are the kinds of things you want to speak to when you're developing your resume. So if you notice, there's a little bit of everything: communication skills, technical skills, academic achievement, analytical problem-solving skills. Those are the kinds of things you want to keep in mind when you're choosing words. It's not all about the experience you've had, it's about what you can bring to the table. So if you can translate your experience in a way where you can show that these are things that you're going to effectively be able to do and to offer the company, you're going to have a better chance of getting that phone call, that interview, and ultimately the job. So one of the myths we hear a lot, especially related to creating your work entries and things like that, is that resumes have to be one page. That did used to be true, and in certain industries such as accounting and fashion, that is still kind of the standard. But for the rest of the industries, or most industries, the standard is really becoming 2 pages. Now those 2 pages need to count. Everything that's on them needs to be relevant and needs to be there, but 2 pages maximum. Now if it only takes you a page, then use that page. Employers don't need to see more than what they're asking for, more than what's necessary. Employers are typically spending between 20 and 30 seconds reviewing your resume. So again, everything needs to count. And if you do include a second page, make sure to include your name and the page number so that if pages get separated or the desk is kind of crazy and things get misplaced, they can go back together. Otherwise, the second page is going to be thrown away and employers only going to see a portion of your experience. So the first aspect of your resume is, of course, your header, which seems really intuitive, really simple, but you'd be surprised how many times we see kind of crazy stuff in career services. The first thing is you want to put your name. You want to use one address, the address that's local to the job, of course, if you live there, or where you will be living after school. So if you are, say, from Brownsville and you're moving back, you could use your local address there. You also want to make sure that you include a phone number that's the best number to reach you at, and if it is a cell phone, please check your voicemail. Make sure it's professional sounding. There are employers that make decisions just based off the first impression, and if they get your voicemail the first time around and you've got a ringtone or something that's a little bit inappropriate, that's really going to stand out in a negative way. The other part of this is your email address. Every student at the University of the Incarnate Word is given an Incarnate Word email address that's very professional. It's usually your name, maybe a couple numbers, but keep it simple. We see things here in career services like Hello Kitty 111 or Cutie 555, and it really sends the wrong message to the employer that you're not serious about job searching and you're really maybe not the best candidate for the job. Now, the objective is typically the next thing you'll see on a resume after the header, but objectives aren't always used. It's kind of something that's becoming outdated in a lot of industries. So from a career services standpoint, there are really just a couple occasions where we would recommend that you use them. First is when you're posting online. If you're going to monster.com or one of those websites, and you're just kind of posting it out there for employers to see, you want to be specific about what you're looking for so that you can get a better match. The other option is when you're cold calling employers, which is basically saying, okay, I'm interested in this industry, I haven't seen this specific job or this company posting specific jobs, but I'm going to go ahead and contact them just to see if there's something out there. if you do decide to use an objective, you want to be specific. You want to communicate what they're going to get out of it versus, you're looking for a position where you can move up in the company. The other thing to remember about not including an objective is that typically an employer is going to give you the option to include a cover letter, or it's a requirement for the job. If you've written a cover letter, your objective is essentially stated in that letter, so there's no need to be redundant and include it again, because really your cover letter is a much better place to really explain why you're a perfect fit for the company. So use that canvas and really sell yourself there and save room on the resume for what's really going to count. When you get to the education section, it's important to remember that this may not be the first section after your objective if you include one. It's really going to be dependent on the job you're applying for, if it's your degree that's really going to sell you or if it's more your skills and experience. But if you do include your degree information first, one of the things you want to notice on this slide is first we have the degree listed, then where you got the degree. From an employer and hiring standpoint, they're going to be more concerned with what you did versus where you did it. Also, notice we put graduation pending. Obviously, in a lot of cases, you're going to be applying for jobs that are either part-time or you're applying before you actually graduate. You want to let that employer know basically when you're looking to graduate. They're not going to be as concerned with how long you've been in school or when you started versus the end point. If your GPA is above a 3.0, include it. That can either be your overall GPA or your GPA in your major. You just want to make sure that it's the correct GPA, because if they request a transcript and your GPA is not correct, that's not going to be a positive thing for your application. Also notice here we have applicable coursework. There's kind of two ways to do applicable coursework depending on your experience. In some cases, you've taken classes that are going to be directly applicable. So you want to list the course title. Not all the courses you took that are related. So if you're a business major applying for a management job, you don't need all the classes you took. But really just those that are most, sellable for that position. The other thing you can do is really highlight one huge project you may have done during your time at the university. For business students, for example, they take a capstone course and they work on a project the entire semester. It's a huge project, a lot of work. They can really show outcomes from that project, and in some cases, the companies that they're working with on their projects actually take their advice and their information into consideration and maybe make changes within the company. So you can see that that kind of an experience is going to be huge to an employer. They're going to be able to see that, okay, you've obviously done this kind of work, you've been in the real world, you've applied the theory in a real world environment. So if you have those kinds of experiences, talk about them. You don't need to go in depth, and you really want to focus on outcomes and specifics. So, use industry language or language that's appropriate in that industry. You want to use kind of heightened language, so you want it to sound impressive without, going overboard. But that's also another time when it's a good idea to send your resume into Career Services for review, just so that we can make sure, review it, give you maybe some suggestions here and there. So your skills section can be in a number of places on your resume, but it's important to remember that your skills section needs to be relevant to the job you're applying for, and that it will be changed depending on what that job is. So you can see here bilingual is mentioned. If you are bilingual, mention it. You want to mention your proficiency level. Then you can talk about, for instance, computer skills, communication skills, but it needs to be relevant to the job. So you can kind of get a clue for this on the job description, because typically the job description will tell you exactly what they're looking for. If the job description doesn't mention anything, say, about using computers, then that's not a skill that you need to include. Because your skills section is an area on your resume that will change depending on the job you're applying for, it's very important that you don't just copy your skills from a sample or something you saw online, because it can cost you the job. So when you get to your work experience, again, we have what you did, where you did it, then the dates. Notice here that the person has bolded cashier. That's going to be probably the most important depending on what you're applying for. So in that case, you want that to stand out. But notice it's clean, it's easy to read, you're not looking for anything. So this is really how your header should be for each of your experience points. So now that we talked about the header for each of your employment entries, now we want to talk about action verbs. Action verbs are a great way to really spruce up your bullets. You want to have between 3 and 5 bullets for each work experience, and basically you can go from this list and pick words. You want words, again, that are going to be relevant to the industry. So if you're going into management, you want to include words related to management or things that would be beneficial in a management situation. But a really great rule of thumb is to just print this action verb list out and have it with you as you're going through your resume, as you're creating your bullets. It's easier to formulate the bullet around the action verb, but using the action verbs for each bullet, it's really going to take your resume to the next level, and we'll see an example of this in a little while. The other thing to remember is that if you've had internship experiences, whether they were paid or unpaid, you will still format them like a paid work experience. So you still want to follow the previous guidelines in relation to any internships, co-ops, or anything like that that you've gone through or that you've participated in. So we've spent a lot of time up to this point talking about your work experience, how to format it, what words to use, that kind of thing. But not every student has worked. So for those of you to which that applies, here are some other sections you can include. And even if you've worked, you can include these sections as well. There's actually a lot more than this, but don't discount any experiences you've had, any awards, certifications, community service, or organizations you've been a part of, especially if you were, say, treasurer or secretary or president, even if it's of your social fraternity, the student government, kind of whatever it is, it can count. You just need to be conscious of the words you're using and how it's going to count. And that's something where you may need to visit with Career Services to really establish the best way to sell you if you don't have that work experience or internship experience. So here we have the sample. If you notice, we've already kind of talked about the basics, but this is in general what the top of your resume should look like in most cases. You can do a little formatting in relation to fonts and sizes and things like that, but again, you want to keep it clear, concise, clean. You want to stick with black font, no crazy colors. You don't know how the employer's computer can read it, especially if they're using resume filtering software. You don't want to leave anything up to chance, so even fonts, you want to stick to something that's general and generic, so Times New Roman, Arial in some cases, things that are very clean. And again, if you have questions on what's appropriate and what's not, please stop by our office, and that's a very simple question for us to answer. Again, we have the skills and qualifications section, but this is going to be very unique to you. If you notice, they've used numbers on the fourth bullet, so demonstrated ability to lead teams of up to 100 individuals. That's going to stand out to an employer a little bit more because it really shows them the scope of what that person is capable of doing. Leading teams of 10 is very different than leading teams of 100. So wherever you can throughout your resume, whether it's in your skills, your academic experience, your courses, your work experience, clubs and organizations, whatever it is, use numbers and outcomes whenever possible. Again, it just helps show scope and it gives an employer an idea of what kind of responsibility not only you've already had, but then what responsibility they can expect to give you. So again, we have the education section. It's very easy to read. The biggest thing to note about this, we've already discussed most of the points, but again, the employer doesn't have to search for anything, which is so crucial when sending out a resume these days. So here we have a sample experience section. The first entry here is as a resident assistant. If you notice, it's from August 2005 to present. Everything on your resume is in reverse chronological order, so the most recent goes first, meaning anything that you're currently involved with is going to be at the top of your list. So after the dates, we get into the actual bullets. Here we have 5 well-written bullets that each start with a different word. That's going to be very important as you format your resume, especially in this economy. One of the biggest areas for improvement we see among student resumes is that they send resumes where each of the bullets starts with the same word, or they use 2 or 3 words and they just alternate it. That's where your action verb list comes in handy, and it'll really help take it to the next level. So another experience entry here, we see senior student assistant. This is actually a work study position. So that's where I was talking about your work study positions can still matter. If you notice bullet 3, this person's used numbers. They're talking about a database with over 2,000 employers and 6,000 students. That's a huge database. That's showing the employer exactly how much they were working with. If you're working on a database that only has 30 people, it's going to be a lot easier to manage. But as a student, being given that kind of responsibility is going to be a big thing as you transition into the world of work. So you can see here as a cashier and trainer at Party City, this person's used a lot of bullets that really give some good information. So this is what we're talking about when we say take it to the next level using your vocabulary. So one of the things this person did was create checklists and training aids. Not really a big deal. If you've trained anybody, you'll know that that's a pretty standard thing. But it's all in the language. So created numerous checklists and training aids, increasing levels of retention. So you can see the outcome of that extra work. Also, you can see things like created organized lists of all products sold throughout store in order for employees to increase product placement knowledge. essentially what they did was inventory the store and hand it out to their employees so they could see, okay, this is in aisle 5 or that's in aisle 6 in general. So you can see they took something very simple and made it sound a lot fancier just by using different words, different vocabulary words, and it really takes it up a notch, and that's the kind of thing employers want to see. So what we've been looking today is a very simple entry-level student resume. So the next and last section we'll look at is awards and honors. This is pretty typical, and just to let you know, any kind of academic scholarship or merit-based scholarship you've been awarded, that also counts. If you notice here on the awards and honors, it's still in reverse chronological order with the most recent first. And notice things like Dean's List, it's all semesters instead of listing each and every semester. Now, say you haven't been on the Dean's List every single semester and you've had some breaks. That's an occasion where you can separate them up, but you want to combine them as much as possible because, again, you don't want it to look tedious to the employer that's trying to review it. So as you're preparing your resume or updating the resume you already have, it's important to remember the basics we've discussed today. So keeping it clean, concise, making every word count, using action verbs and focusing on outcomes and numbers to help show scope and responsibility, and then really just making sure that you formatted it and listed everything in the order it's going to make sense to the employer. So even for your work bullets, making sure that each bullet you're including is in the order of importance, essentially, to the job you're applying for. So to wrap up, I've included a list of additional resources offered by the Office of Career Services and Professional Development. So of course, we review resumes and cover letters, also personal statements. If you're applying to grad school or you need a personal statement for whatever reason, you can email it to us or upload it to Career Circuit, the online job database, and we'll take a look at it and email you back suggestions. It's very helpful. It's definitely encouraged. This is going to help you a lot in preparing for your job search. We also provide mock interviews, which basically runs through the interview process. We ask you sample questions and we give you advice on your answers and give you feedback. This is good for any interviews you may have after school, but also if you're looking for part-time jobs or if you're applying to pharmacy school, med school, or other kinds of graduate programs, we definitely encourage you to come in. So I already mentioned Career Circuit in relation to getting your resume or cover letter reviewed, but this is going to be very important to your job search in other ways. This is the job and internship database that's exclusive to UIW students and alumni. You do have access to it after you graduate, and it's updated continuously. Also, for the job fair and internship fair, that's where the employers that will be in attendance will be listed. So it's definitely good to get registered, get logged in, and definitely complete your profile. So for those of you who are watching this today, who are unsure of your major, or you selected a major and now you're finding you don't enjoy it, or you have a major set and you're happy with your major but you don't know what to do as far as a career after school, we have assessments that our office offers that will really kind of help you out, help give you some direction. One is called the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator and the other is called the Strong Interest Inventory. We definitely recommend them if you're feeling a little bit lost. So for those of you that are hitting the junior, senior level, we offer something called career counseling to really give you some guidance and give you some starting points. It's a brief appointment that really just figures out where you are and where you're trying to go and what resources will best help you get there. Then we also have workshops that are offered throughout the year. So definitely keep your eyes open on campus and in your email for different events that are going on. They're offered in the fall and spring. One of the biggest highlights in the spring is the job fair and then a separate internship fair, so be sure to check both of those events out. Our website also provides a wealth of information to you 24/7, and one of the biggest things we like to highlight are the Career Spots videos. They're short videos, typically 3 to 5 minutes, that cover a wide variety of career topics, just to give you a little bit of a refresher on anything you may need before you start your job search process. You can also stop by our office in the Administration Building, room 113 for more information. We have a lot of handouts available on site, both outside the office and inside the office. And it's good to stop by the office just to see what's happening, what events are coming up, and to meet your career services staff members because we're here to help you at any stage in your job search process. If you have any questions or comments, please contact us at 210-829-3931 or by email at careers@uiwtx.edu. We're also located in the Administration Building, room 113, if you'd like to visit us in person. Thank you and have a great day.